Hello, my name is Roman Dzindzichashvili, and this is another lecture on certain variation of the Caro-Kann. And I want to bring to your attention two games. That the games they were played by me on the internet, and they played against pretty strong players. The reason I want to bring my own games is that there are relatively different ideas. There are different ideas from theoretically known that I kind of invented myself. And I played them, I think I played them the way I want to present this idea. I played them the way I think it should be played, at least the opening part, and I got significant advantage. And they're both games played by some, one against IM and the other against GM. Well, when I play International Master or Grandmaster on the internet, and it's about equivalent to at least an average player in tournament game they'll play. So what you're going to see is probably something like this you should expect if you played it yourself. So let's go to first game that played against IM. It's not that important to know the game, so let's go with the game. E4, C6, D4, D5. This is the variation of Caro-Kann I was referring to. And now, knight F6. Bishop F4, Bishop G4. This is probably the most popular way to play against this system of Caro-Kann for black. So Queen D7, theoretically known move, more popular move is Queen C8, but Queen D7 is little later recommendation. The reason why they didn't want to play Queen D7 originally is because you're going to see it in the game. Knight D2, Knight F3, and now Bishop takes F3. The reason why, because if black goes Bishop E7, then Knight E5 will force black's queen to move to C8. That's why they were going directly to C8. And the reason why they forced to move the queen, because taking knight on E5 will lose the game immediately after pawn takes, attacking black's knight on F6 and threatening Bishop B5, winning black's queen. So that's why this happened. But in this position, instead of playing Bishop E7, they played Bishop takes F3. That's the idea of Queen D7 move. And now Bishop D6, sacrificing the pawn, which is not that great to accept this sacrifice because black has very good counterplay. They're threatening rook B8 and take pawn on B2. And if queen moves back, there is a possibility of E5 interfering with white's castling. On DE, knight takes E5. White still has problem castling, because if castle long, then after rook B8 followed by rook C8, black is going to have very strong play. So, of course, I don't like the continuation of taking on D6 and B7. And Bishop G3 is a new idea that was not played before. Well, actually, it's my idea. The idea of Bishop G3, after castling two castle back, rook C8, rook A, E1. So what I want to play is knight E5 next move, not to exchange dark square bishop unless black takes the dark square bishop. That's what happened. But now we take hg, and it's a big difference between, in the position, between white having pawn, double pawn on g file, or having the g3 pawn on h file. It's a big difference because this is all about having double pawns on g file. And here is why. b5, knight e5, queen b7, and g4. Now you can see the idea. G pawn, second G pawn, pawn on g4, is being used as a demolition pawn, well, just to restrict black's piece movement and knight on it, to kick the knight from f6, and later to play g3, king g2, and rook h1, to use the h file for creating strong attack. Black played h6, now rook e3. So I'm trying to play g5 and rook h3, and after knight c4, rook g3. Now we want to go g5. Knight e4, bishop takes e4, g5. Pawn takes, rook takes. Well, actually we took, well, if we take immediately on g5, there is a possibility of playing f6. So we take on c4, and rook takes g5. Now, white has some advantage in pawn structure. f6, rook c5. We don't want to play rook g3 and allow black to play b4. After rook c5, black took on c5 and went queen d5. This looks good for black, but it's not. It's not good at all. White has significant pawn structure advantage. After b4, rook d8, black has d file, black has pawn on e4, but they also have bad position. Rook e1, f3. Now, this is a good position for understanding pawn structures. White has very powerful commodity in a form of a protected pawn on c5, protected pass pawn on c5, and potential of breaking through with the c4 and having connected pass pawns if they manage to exchange queens. So queen e2 was played, and after a6, decisive f3, which probably seals black's fate. Pawn on e4 is hanging, and after e takes f, simple queen takes e6 practically ends the game. After exchanging queens, black's pawn on g2 is powerless, and white is going to have several connected pass pawns on the queen side, and the game is practically over. So rook d3, c4, pawn takes c6, now c7 is a threat, rook has to go back c7, and rook c6, and after king f7, b5, and after king e7, b6. Well, there is no way black can resist here, so they resign. White can simply push the a pawn all the way or go b7, or on any move just go b7, and after rook takes c7, rook d4 check, followed by promoting b8 queen, and the game is over. This is an interesting game. So Now, I want to show you another game, a different variation, which is also my idea, that I put a lot of effort in creating new positional ideas in this variation of Sicilian. So let's look at this game. So this game was played against another IM, or maybe even GM, I don't know. So, well, here is very well-known position of this variation with G6 continuation. The idea of G6, sometimes they play bishop G7 and castle, but mostly to play bishop F5 next move. That's what happened. Well, not next move, move after maybe. And H3 is entirely my idea. And why? What is the point of playing H3 here? If on previous moves we didn't mind black to go bishop G4 because we would play knight D2, and after bishop G7 we will get black's light square bishop. So we didn't have to play H3 as a prophylactic move. So we went knight D2 and castling, and now H3. Why do we play H3? The idea is very simple. It's not a prophylactic move. It's a waiting move. We want to know what black's plan is, and we don't want to commit ourselves to castling on the king side. So that's why we play H3. And you're going to see very well the idea. Bishop F5. Now we exchange bishops and go G4. That's why we didn't castle on a king side. And after G4, we're trying to create an attack on black's king by playing rook G1 and opening the G file. And for our king, we want to castle on the queen side. So Queen C8 was played, protecting F5 pawn, knight E5, knight E4. White has to continue with creating attack on the king side. Rook G1. Now we want to take on F5 and open the G file. King H8 is very logical move. Now Queen E2. We want to go F3, and at the same time we want to maybe castle at some point with white. Rook F8, F3, knight D6. Well, if black takes, white takes on D2, and I strongly believe maybe even, well, this is good position. On E5 we can simply take bishop takes E5 and castle, which will give big advantage to white. And maybe even taking on D2 with a king, but taking with a queen is a lot safer. So black played knight D6. Now we're castling, and it's obvious that black wants to get back and create some counterplay on the queen side. So they go rook B8, rook D E1, queen B7, knight B3, knight will go to C5. White has pressure on E file and potentials on G file. In my opinion, this is already big advantage for white. Now, after rook D8, knight C5, queen B5. Of course, the last thing we want in this position is to exchange queens. So queen H2, potentially creating pressure on D6 pawn. Now we're threatening, so black played queen C4, and we play king b1, protecting a2 pawn, and threatening, for example, on some move, random move, we just can simply take and win a pawn by taking on e8 and on d6. However, it's black's move, and they played a5, which doesn't do much either, because you can't really taking serious a pawn pushing to a4, a3, and creating some threats to white's king. Bishop takes and knight b7. Now we are attacking knight, rook on d8, and we are attacking pawn on d6. So black is totally busted at this point. Rook takes e1, rook takes e1, rook f8, knight takes d6, and this is completely hopeless. Queen d3 check, king a, queen c2. Now we don't mind an endgame, because we're going to have big positional advantage. Knight is going to be much better than black's bishop when knight lands on f5, and we're going to have an extra pawn. Now black doesn't want to exchange queens. Knight takes f5, dominating knight on f5, bishop f6, queen h2, and this is practically over. Queen d6 is coming, protecting h3 pawn and threatening, devastating queen d6, check, king a1, rook d8, but that does not stop queen d6. Queen d6 was played attacking rook on d8 and bishop on f6, and taking the queen will lead to immediate mate. So after bishop g5 and queen takes d8, black simply resigned. Actually, this is a good game, and very simple to understand and very straightforward. What white did, they create potential threats to a black's king, leaving black practically without any counterplay. And after that, safeguarding their own king, castling on queen side, and getting completely winning position. I think the reason why I brought, and again, I'm mentioning that my own games, because I used every idea I put in developing this system. I put every idea in this game, and I was very successful. I think the level of resistance was average, but you don't expect level of resistance in your games on a very highest level. So I think this game, because of that, may come very handy and very instructive. Thank you very much.